They called him the King, the man who changed music forever. But in a quiet recording studio in 1969, something happened that even Elvis didn't see coming. A man walked in with a guitar, a drawl, and a song so raw, so slick, so impossible to ignore. That, when the last note played, Elvis Presley turned to the room and said, "Well, I guess we just got showed." His name? Jerry Reed. A country singer most people had never heard of. And with one song, he didn't just impress Elvis. He stole the show. Not with fame, not with flash, not with a fan base, but with pure, undeniable talent. Fingers flying, soul wide open. This is the story of how an unknown guitar player from Georgia walked into the lion's den and walked out with the King's respect. And it's not just about music, it's about humility, genius, and the moment a legend bowed to a man he barely knew. It was January 1969. American Sound Studio, Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis Presley was back. After 7 long years of Hollywood movies, formulaic scripts, and fading relevance, the King was returning to his roots. No more cowboy hats and corny plots. This time, it was real. Raw Soulful, the album, from Elvis in Memphis. The producer, Chips Moman the band, the Memphis Boys, one of the tightest session groups in history, and the stakes, his career. Because by 1969, Elvis was in danger of becoming a nostalgia act. The Beatles, the Stones. The world had moved on, and Elvis was stuck in a rut. But in that studio, something shifted. And it started with a man in the corner, chewing gum, wearing a beat-up cowboy hat, fingers dancing on his guitar like it was breathing. His name was Jerry Reed Hubbard, but everyone called him Jerry Reed. At the time, he wasn't a superstar. He had a few minor country hits. U.S. Mail, She Got the Gold Mine, I Got the Shaft, would come later. But in Nashville, he was known as the Guitar Wizard. A session player so good, they said, if you can dream it, Jerry can play it. When Elvis walked in and heard him warming up, a complex finger-picking pattern fast as a heartbeat, he stopped dead, turned to the engineer and said, "Who? Is that Cat?" They told him, Jerry Reed. Elvis smiled, then said, "Get him on every track. No audition, no hesitation, just instinct." Because even Elvis knew, when you hear greatness, you don't question it. You make room for it. Jerry wasn't just a guitarist. He was a songwriter, a storyteller, a man who could make a guitar talk, cry, laugh, and fight. And one night, after a long session, he played Elvis a song he'd just finished. Not for him, just for fun. The title? Guitar Man. It started with a finger-picked riff, fast, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. No drums, no bass, just guitar, and it sounded like nothing anyone had ever heard. Jerry sang it rough, southern, full of swagger, a tale of a traveling musician who plays his way into town, wins hearts, and leaves before sunrise. When it ended, the room was silent. Then Elvis stood up, walked over, put his hand on Jerry's shoulder, and said, "I'm cutting that, tomorrow." But there was a problem. Elvis couldn't play the riff. Nobody could. It was too fast, too complex, too Jerry Reed. So Jerry did something no session player ever does. He said, "Let me play it for you." And that's when it happened. The next day, Jerry laid down the entire guitar track for Guitar Man before Elvis even sang a note. He didn't just play rhythm, he played everything. Bass lines with his thumb, melody with his fingers, percussion with his palm. It was one man, one guitar, no overdubs. When Elvis heard the playback, he laughed, then said, "Man, you don't need me on this song, you got it all." But Jerry insisted, and Elvis agreed, on one condition: you let me do it my way. So Elvis took the song and turned it into a sleek, sexy rockabilly anthem. He added horns, a driving beat, And that unmistakable voice, smooth, powerful, full of swagger. But the soul of the song, that was all Jerry. And when Guitar Man dropped in 1968, not 67, it became a #1 hit on the country charts and a fan favorite. But here's what most people don't know. Elvis hated his own version at first. He thought it was too polished, too slick. He said, "It's good, but it ain't real." He even told Jerry, "Yours was better." And fans agreed. Bootlegs of Jerry's original demo flew underground. People called it the song Elvis wished he'd written. In fact, when Jerry released his own version later, it became a top 10 hit, proving the song didn't need Elvis to shine. It just needed Jerry's hands. But the real moment Jerry stole the show wasn't in the studio. It was on stage in 1970 during one of Elvis's live shows in Nashville. He was doing his usual set, Suspicious Minds, Hound Dog, the hits. Then, out of nowhere, he stopped, looked at the crowd, smiled, and said, "There's a man in this band who can play a guitar like nobody's business. Y'all ever hear of Jerry Reed?" The crowd cheered. Jerry stepped forward. Elvis handed him the mic and said, "Go ahead, man. Show him how it's done." Then Jerry played Guitar Man, his version, just him and his guitar, fingers flying. The crowd frozen. Even Elvis stood still, watching. When it ended, Elvis dropped to one knee, bowed his head, and said, "Now that's how you play a guitar." The crowd went wild. Jerry later said, "I've been in music 20 years. That was the greatest moment of my life." Elvis didn't just share the spotlight, he gave it away. And in that moment, Jerry Reed didn't just steal the show. He earned the King's respect. But to understand why that moment mattered so much, we have to go back to Georgia, to a boy born in poverty with a guitar as his only escape. Jerry Reed Hubbard was born in 1937 in Atlanta, Georgia. His father left. His mother worked 3 jobs, and young Jerry found solace in music. He taught himself. Guitar, no lessons, no money, just raw instinct. By 15, he was playing in bars. By 20, he was a session player in Nashville. But he wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He was deep. He didn't just play chords. He played emotions. And he had a style so unique, they called it the Atlanta thumb. A finger-picking technique where his thumb played bass, rhythm, and percussion all at once. Chet Atkins, the father of country guitar, once said, "I taught a lot of players, but Jerry, he taught himself, and he taught me." Yet for years, Jerry stayed in the shadows, writing songs for others, playing on their records. Never the star. Because in Nashville, it wasn't about who was best. It was about who looked the part. And Jerry? He was too rough, too real, too unpolished. But Elvis saw past that because Elvis knew what it was like to be misunderstood, to be more than a face, more than a voice, more than a king. And when he heard Jerry play, he didn't hear a session man. He heard a brother in music. After that night, Elvis started calling Jerry the Master. He invited him to Graceland. They jammed. They laughed. Jerry taught Elvis how to really play fingerstyle, and Elvis told him, "You're the reason I started taking the guitar seriously again." They recorded more songs together. In the Ghetto, Don't Think Twice, Gentle on My Mind. Jerry played on them all, and every time, Elvis made sure the band knew. That's Jerry Reed. Listen close. You're in the presence of greatness. But Jerry never changed. No ego, no demands. He showed up, played, left. Even when Elvis offered him a permanent spot in the band, Jerry said, "Nah, man, I'm just here to play." That humility, that love for the craft, that's what made him unforgettable. Now, most people don't know Jerry Reed today, but legends do. Chet Atkins called him the finest guitarist alive. B.B. King said, "Jerry could make a guitar cry, laugh, and talk." And Johnny Cash once said, "If you want to know what soul sounds like on a guitar, listen to Jerry Reed." He even became an actor, playing Smokey and the Bandits' trucker buddy Cletus Snow, and when he sang Eastbound and Down with Waylon Jennings, that guitar intro, all Jerry. No session players, just him. But his greatest moment? That night in Nashville, when the king of rock stepped aside and let a humble session player take the stage. Because real greatness, it's not about being the loudest, it's not about the spotlight, it's about the moment someone listens and knows they've heard something they'll never forget. And when Jerry Reed played that first riff of Guitar Man, Elvis knew. He didn't just hear a song. He heard the truth that sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one who speaks the loudest through his music. But there's one more layer to this story. Years later, after Elvis's death, Jerry was asked, "Did you ever feel like you outshone him?" He paused, then said, "No. Because greatness isn't about beating someone. It's about honoring them. I didn't steal anything, I just played my heart. And Elvis? He had the courage to say, 'That's better than me. That's the real royalty.' And in 2008, when Jerry was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, he didn't talk about his hits. He didn't mention Smokey. He stood on stage and said, 'The greatest honor of my life wasn't a trophy. It was the night Elvis Presley knelt at my feet and called me the Master.' He passed away in 2008, Elvis in 1977. But their moment lives on, because it wasn't about rivalry. It wasn't about ego. It was about mutual respect. Two artists, one from Tupelo, one from Atlanta, both shaped by pain, both saved by music. And in that studio, in that concert hall, they found something rare. A brother in sound, soft guitar. Guitar Man. Instrumental fades in. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe, because legends aren't just made on stage. Sometimes they're made in the shadows, with a guitar and one unforgettable riff. And in the comments, tell me, who's the most underrated musician you think deserves more credit? Have you ever heard Jerry Reed's original version of Guitar Man? And would you have bowed to a man like Jerry? Until next time, this is your channel name, telling the stories behind the music, one forgotten legend at a time. If you're still here, thank you. This next part was never meant for the world, not for headlines, not for documentaries, not even for books. It's for those who feel music in their bones, for those who understand that the greatest moments in history don't happen on stage. They happen in a quiet room after the lights go out, when two souls speak without pretense. In 1970, after that legendary Nashville show, the one where Elvis knelt before Jerry Reed, something happened backstage that no camera caught, no reporter wrote about it. It was never recorded, until now. In 2007, just a year before his passing, Jerry Reed gave one final interview, not to a journalist, but to a young filmmaker named Daniel Cole, working on a passion project about unsung heroes of American music. No lights, no crew, just a tape recorder, a worn leather chair, and a promise. Don't release this until I'm gone. And in that room, Jerry shared what Elvis said to him that night, words so personal, so raw, so full of humility, that he kept them locked away for 37 years. He said, after the show, everyone was celebrating, champagne, laughter, backslaps, but Elvis, he just looked at me and said, "Come with me." We walked down the hall, not to the VIP room, not to the party. He took me to his dressing room, closed the door, sat down, looked at the floor and said, "Jerry, I spend millions on clothes, on cars, on Graceland, but I can't buy what you got." Jerry paused, then said, "I didn't know what to say, so I just asked, 'What's that, Elvis?'" He tapped his guitar, the one he'd just handed me on stage, and whispered, "The gift, the real one. You don't play to be famous, you play because the music lives in you, and tonight, I saw it." Then he looked down and said, I wish I was half the musician you are. Jerry's voice cracked. He wiped his eye and said, "The king of rock, the man who changed the world, said that to me. I never told a soul, because some moments are too holy to share." But that wasn't the end of the story. Jerry said Elvis then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, yellowed, fragile. He handed it to Jerry. Didn't say a word. It was a handwritten note, in Elvis's handwriting, dated January 15th, 1969, the day they recorded Guitar Man. It read, "To Jerry, you didn't just play on my song, you gave it a soul. I've spent my life chasing greatness. Tonight I saw it, and it was you. Thank you for showing me what music really is. Elvis." Jerry said he kept that note in his guitar case for the rest of his life. Never showed it to anyone, not his wife, not his children. He said, that note was worth more than any award, because it wasn't from a fan. It was from a brother. But there's more. Years later, in 1976, just a year before Elvis died, Jerry got a late-night call. No caller ID, just a familiar voice, weak, tired, but still warm. "Jerry?" "It's Elvis." Jerry said his heart stopped. They hadn't spoken in years. Elvis said, "I'm sitting here, listening to Guitar Man. Your version. I play it every now and then. Makes me feel honest." Then he said, "I don't know if I did right by music. I think I let the fame take over. But when I hear you play, I remember what it's supposed to be." Jerry said he cried, told him, "You gave the world more than most ever will, and you gave me respect when I didn't ask for it. That means more than any record." Elvis was quiet for a long time, then whispered, "Tell me again that I mattered." Jerry said, "You mattered, Elvis. You still do." That was the last time they spoke. Elvis died 9 months later. Jerry never went public with that call, never mentioned it in interviews. Even when asked about his relationship with Elvis, he'd just smile and say, "Some things are between two men in the music." But in that final interview, he added something no one knew. "After he died, I went to Graceland. Not as a guest. I just stood outside the gates, and I played Guitar Man on my acoustic, all the way through. No crowd, no cameras, just me. And the wind. And when I finished, I looked up, and for a second, I swear I saw him in the upstairs window, smiling. Now, most people don't know Jerry Reed's name today, but legends do. When Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits was asked who inspired his fingerstyle playing, he said Jerry Reed, hands down. If you want to know how to make a guitar sing, listen to him. When Brad Paisley was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, he said, "I wouldn't be here if not for Jerry Reed. He proved you don't need to be flashy to be great." And Tom Hanks, who knew Jerry personally, once said, "He was the most real person I've ever met. No ego, no mask, just talent and kindness." But Jerry never cared about fame. He didn't want statues. He didn't want headlines. He just wanted to play the truth. And in 2008, at his Hall of Fame induction, when they asked him to perform, he didn't play his hit. He didn't sing. He played the opening riff of Guitar Man. Just once. Slow, soft, like a prayer. And when it ended, he looked up and said, "That one's for the king, who had the courage to bow to a man with nothing but a guitar and a dream." Then he walked off stage. No encore, no speech, just silence and tears in the crowd. So if you've made it this far, you've just heard something no one else knows. Not because it was hidden, but because it was too precious to tell. This wasn't about fame. It wasn't about rivalry. It was about two men who understood each other. One who had everything but doubted his soul. One who had nothing but knew he was whole. And in that moment backstage, Elvis didn't see a session player. He saw truth. He saw purity. He saw the kind of musician he always wanted to be, and he honored it. So the next time you hear Guitar Man, don't just hear the riff. Hear the respect, the humility, the love between two artists who spoke through music, not words, because greatness isn't always in the spotlight. Sometimes it's in the quiet after the applause, in a dressing room, in a whisper, in a legacy that doesn't need a crown. And now, you carry that truth with you. Thank you for staying, for listening, for honoring the ones who played not for fame, but for the love of the music. If this moved you, share this video quietly, not for views, but so someone who's forgotten their worth might remember talent doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs to be real. Until next time. This is Forever Graceland, Elvis enthusiasts, telling the stories no one else dares to finish.